Welcome to this evening's Telia Talk, where we're going to be discussing the future of digitalisation across the Nordics and the Baltics. First of all, thank you very much to all of you for coming along, and thank you to everyone watching us on the live web stream as well. If anyone would like to take part in this discussion, you can do so using the hashtag Telia Talks. My name is Maddie Savage. I'm going to be your moderator for this evening's event. My background is as a BBC journalist, working in London for more than 10 years. I moved to Sweden 2 years ago, and I must say I've been very impressed with how innovative and digital this region is. But the question is, can it maintain that position as we move forward to the future? And that's what we're going to be discussing today, looking at the possibilities, the challenges, and looking at how industry leaders and governments can work as we take the next steps. So let's introduce our eminent panel, the Prime Minister of Estonia, Taavi Rõivas, Peter Eriksson, Minister for Housing and Digital Development here in Sweden, and Johan Dennelind, the CEO of Telia Company. Let's give them a warm welcome. So great to have you all on the stage. We're going to give you each around 5 minutes just to give some first remarks really on some of the possibilities for digitalisation in this region. And we'll begin with you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. And it's really great to be here in Telia Headquarters, as Telia and Estonia has been I would say, strategic partnership for quite some time. Not only is Telia the number 3 foreign investor in Estonia, but also Telia has a remarkable role in making Estonia the most digital country in the world. And this is something that we value very highly. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you also for this partnership. Now, let me start by saying what is our idea of a government as a service. We believe that people, at least in Estonia, I don't know how it is in Sweden, but at least in Estonia, people usually have much better things to do than to visit government offices. So already for like 15 or 16 years, Estonian governments, and I have been in office only for 2.5 years, so many governments in a row have been focusing on how to make it easier to get public services for people and how to provide them public services without the need to show up, without the need to have some huge amount of time spent on bureaucracy. And it all started up with digital identification. So 16 years ago, every Estonian got this kind of card that not only is shown to people, but it also has a chip on it. And Telia, by the way, was one of the companies from the very beginning that was part of it and helping the government to get it introduced. So what is the secret behind it? Nothing, rocket science in today's world, but keep in mind that it was introduced back in the year 2000. There's a chip which you plug into your computer, and there is a PIN code. And together with that, you can create an encrypted key, which is much safer than any form of just picture or any form of handwritten signature. And if you have something like that, I mean, if you have digital, secure identity in place, and if you have a proper legal framework, you can do anything. I mean, really anything online. Let me give you just a couple of examples that are really typical for Estonia. For example, entrepreneurs. Before they become entrepreneurs, they need to start a company. When they start a company, they don't show up in any state register, but they simply use their electronic identity to log into this respective portal. They give all the information there. It takes you usually about a day to get everything done and the company fully running. Our state record is 18 minutes, but usually it takes a couple of hours, but let's say a day. So, we are conservative and you can really be surprised that it's actually faster. And all the reporting that you need to do later is also digital. So let's say the most common thing to report, of course, is taxes. Anyone who runs a company needs to declare taxes twice a month. Or you can do it at one date, but basically you need to first of all declare all the employment taxes you have paid, and then VAT. And of course, any Estonian company does it online without showing up anywhere or without submitting any documents. And the same is for citizens. If I as a citizen, I have used that example before, but my last tax declaration I submitted in Luxembourg airport. I used my iPad. I logged in with my mobile ID. By the way, the digital ID in the format of mobile ID was founded by Telia, the biggest mobile operator in Estonia. And I used my digital identity to log in Luxembourg airport, and I did it in, I think, 3 minutes or so. And I was, below average. I was really slow because, nevertheless. So usually it takes you, let's say, 3 minutes if you are slow to declare your taxes, and much easier and much better than to do it in a conventional way. And you can go on naming those services, but the idea is that if you have a good digital infrastructure, including the identity, including the technical solutions, you can build anything on that. Now, let's think how we can take this further. In Estonia, okay, everything we do digitally. We save a lot of time, we save a lot of money. I, as a prime minister, I'm not the only one. All the Estonian entrepreneurs here do the same. For example, if we give signatures, we give them using our digital identity on our mobile phone. And that already saves us 2% of GDP every year. And now, how to take it to the next level, or how to take it further? My argument is that the real way to take it further is to take it international, so that not only Estonia, not only the Nordic countries, but all of EU can use those services cross-country. If a Swede goes on a vacation in Spain and needs a digital prescription, it is available, and so on and so forth. And before we have that, Estonian government has helped to step in a way, and we have offered all the foreigners a glimpse of what can be achieved by offering all foreigners the e-residency of Estonia, which is something some of you already have, like you, but any one of you can apply for. You just log in Google it, you'll find out everything about it. But the idea is that you get similar card that I have, and you need to only identify yourself physically once. You can do it in the embassy, you can do it any police station in Estonia, anywhere. You get similar card, and you can use it as your electronic signature, as your electronic identity, and you can start a company, and the next day you get this card. And I hope that in the future, it's really so that not only inside one country you can do all that, but across European Union. And if we think about it, most of the startuppers here, your business is not only regional, but your business is global. And if we can work together to get all those obstacles away from your business, imagine what that could result into. So that's my main point, that I think that having those services for your citizens as the new norm for all EU countries is the way to go. And I believe that if only a tiny country like Estonia saves 2% of GDP every year while using this kind of services, I think if we would all do that, we would save tens of percents of GDP, and that's something.
So a push for collaboration. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Let's move on to you now, Peter Eriksson, Minister for Housing here in Sweden, also Digital Development.
Well, first, I thank you for coming here to Sweden. I think it's very interesting to have the Estonian Prime Minister here, because They are very innovative and dare to do things that bigger countries often don't dare to do. So it's interesting also in this field of digitalization. And I should say also that next year, when you are chairing the European Union, next autumn, Estonia is chairing, that will be a very interesting and good thing also for Sweden, because they have these matters on number one on the topics on what they want to do in the European Union, and we really want to cooperate on these questions and see that the European Union take a lead position in the world in this matter. So thank you very much for coming here, and also thanking Telia. I haven't been here before either.
It's cool, isn't it? Great building.
It's a nice house, and I was yesterday here actually for the first time, but in the house just opposite of this, seeing the Sweden-Bulgaria match, and that was a good thing too. And since we won 3-0.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I would say that if you go, basically, I am a minister for basically the strategic point of views in these matters, and also on the infrastructure. And I think we are doing a lot of things right now on the infrastructure. We are investing now in Sweden 10 to 12 billion crowns every year in fiber, in broadband to the Swedish people. And Telia is one of the big players here in investing a lot. And there are a number of other companies also in the game, and the government is also putting money into this to get the fibers out, not only in the big cities and the smaller cities, but out in the remote parts of the country. So I think we now, with this a bit irrational approach that we have in Sweden, where a lot of actors go on the same thing, but we actually manage right now to reach out to a lot of people, and when we see what is happening right now in the coming years, we see that in around 2020 we think that we will have around 95% of the Swedish households and people connected with broadband in Sweden, and that is a fantastic result, I think, since we are quite a big country with a lot of people still outside the big cities, and. But this will not end there. We will get even further, and I'm not now studying how much will it take to get everyone in this game in Sweden. So we are working now with a new broadband strategy, and also in the winter we're pushing for a new digital strategy, more of the whole Sweden, also taking in the companies and the competition area and the authorities in this also. So we are right now, I should say, in a very interesting, transformative situation where it's possible to push in for things that was not possible to do earlier. And I hope that the discussion we will open up the coming winter and the coming year in Sweden will be extremely interested to be a part of, and I hope Telia, as well as companies as Eriksson and others, will join this discussion, because quite a lot will happen in this field, and also, as you know, a lot will happen on the European Union level also. So it's interesting. It's an interesting time to be in this game, and I think we will find this cooperation very, very nice.
Thank you very much, Peter Eriksson. Let's move on now to our host, Telia Company. Johan Dennelind, what do you have to add?
Well, thanks, Maddie, and thanks, Prime Minister and Minister, for coming to our home, our digital home, where we just moved in. We're about 4,000 digital ambassadors working in the house here and enjoying it a lot. So thanks for joining us. I don't know if you know that, but we have two of probably the world's greatest ambassadors for digital innovation and agenda setting. Mr. Eriksson, our minister, I think started back in 2002 already when introducing e-citizen in colleagues. And of course, Prime Minister of Estonia is taking a nation further, which is already in the forefront, and where I'm, by the way, also e-citizen since a couple of months back, gracefully so, and honored to be that. And that is really important, that we have people that believe in the digitalization and its opportunities, because the opportunities are really endless. And as a company then focusing now soon purely, but more and more, but soon this is our only focus, this region, the Nordic Baltic region is our home, and we're the leader, and we want to become a clear champion in the region. We want to digitalize the region, and we have set out an ambition to create a gigabit society with terabit territories. And if you think about what that means, it is going beyond just being connected. It's being connected to speedy networks across the territories, but we also want them to be seamless and borderless. So recently we have introduced free roaming in the Nordic Baltics and taking lead on that. We don't want to have obstacles for people and companies and societies getting together. There are endless opportunities. We wanted to check whether we were thinking in the right direction here. So we commissioned a study with Deloitte to find out whether we were underestimating or overestimating the opportunities. And what we found is that actually we are underestimating a lot of the opportunities that are coming. Mr. Prime Minister mentioned some savings on GDPs of 2%, I think it was. We see opportunities of adding 3 to 4 percentage points on GDPs over the coming 3-4 years if we explore and utilize the opportunities of digitalization fully. But we can take more concrete examples. We can save lives. We can save lives in the transportation industry, safe driving, safe transportation. We say there is a number out of thousands of lives, let's see. More importantly, there are opportunities to do good as well. Carbon emission, reducing carbon emission by introducing digitalization across the industries and society is obvious. And this brings me to the recent SDG anniversary. 1 year anniversary was recently in New York with the Sustainability Development Goals. And we have been through them in detail. And in all of the 17 SDGs, there is a clear link to the digitalization and our industry and how we can enable societies and companies and citizens to explore this fully. So I'm very, very bullish and optimistic on the industry as such and the opportunities. But we can't do this alone. And this is where I think we need to do things differently going forward. We need to work even more closely across the ecosystem in the industries, of course, but also even closer to governments and policymakers. And I think there are some clear asks from our side, which I'm happy to go into more detail later. But also my maybe general encouragements to Prime Minister and Minister is to not be afraid of being ambitious and clear to the rest of us in the industries and citizens what's needed. Because it's not just about being connected, it's about really exploring the full opportunities of digitalization. And that it's in all industries and across the board. And here I think we can be pushed harder and be engaged and empowered to do more as part of the industry. So very, very glad to have you here for this discussion in our cradle of digitalization, where we today are very much ahead of the world, but we need to ensure that we stay ahead of the world.
Thank you very much to all three of you. A great introduction to tonight's discussion. We're going to try and touch on 3 themes in some more detail now. Maintaining the competitiveness of the region, looking the interaction between the public and private sector, and also looking at digital inclusion as we move forward. So let's start by talking a bit about competitiveness. I mean, we've heard a lot of positive messages here. We've talked about cooperation, about infrastructure, about sustainability. And as we've heard, the Nordic and Baltic region has been in very much of a sweet spot in recent years. But how can it maintain that position when we know that other countries, larger countries with populations that are much bigger than 10 million, 1.4 million, are really investing in this area as well, notably the US and South Korea? How confident are you that this region is not going to get overtaken by others?
Well, I think we are the best place in Europe in terms of digitalization right now, but to remain the best place in 5 years' time means that we should not be walking, we should be running, and we should be running at quite some pace, because you're very right to say that other countries are catching up very fast. Great Britain is very digital, Japan is becoming more digital, New Zealand, Israel, many regions, not only in Europe, but all over the world, US, of course. And what is the uniqueness in our region, I believe, is that we have the chance to become the first ever, let's say, cross-country border region to provide digital services, such as the roaming free of charge, which is something of pioneering value, I think, and that will happen eventually all over Europe and probably even globally. But that was first done here in Nordic Baltic region, or offering public services to each other's citizens. This is something that Estonia and Finland are currently pioneering, but we're very much welcoming Sweden and other Baltic countries and Denmark to join us. And I think the potential, if anywhere, to provide cross-country services is here in this region. Now, what needs to be done from I think the telcos investing a lot in connectivity, that's essential. Without that, we don't achieve anything. Very fast internet is absolutely like basic hygiene in this issue. But what governments need to do is, I think, not be afraid of progress. The technological solutions are definitely there. Our companies, many of them present here, know what to do technologically. But what needs to be, what was the uniqueness that the governments need to decide that we really look at the risks and we deal with them, but we don't stay afraid of the risks, and we don't worry that, okay, let's postpone it because this way it's easier. And I strongly believe in governments who take things forward, and in doing so, you need to risk. So I think political leadership is one of the keys. But I think that in the Nordics and Baltics, it's possible.
Peter, would you say that Sweden is running? I mean, it has a lot of other challenges at the moment. Is it running in the digitalization direction?
I should say that I agree that we need more of a leadership in this area. Right now, we have been very up running very fast, but others are catching up, I should say. And the truth is that in some parts we are still in a leading position and quite innovative, I should say, an area where we are competitive. But in public sector, I should say, we are not really among the best anymore. And that is an area where we have to be much smarter and more on the edge to be able to say that we are number one in the world again, because we have a structural problem here. We have been, and I am still very proud of our extremely strong local authorities in the cities around Sweden. We have functioning local democracy parties that can rule over a bigger economic area than almost any other place in the world, I should say. But the problem of that thing is that it's very hard to make a good cooperation among all these 290 different towns around Sweden where you have to take local decisions, and we don't have a government in Sweden who can say that you should do this or you should do that. We have at least not the culture. Maybe we have the tools, but we are not used to use them very much to say to the public authorities in Sweden what they should do, and especially not the local authorities.
We'll pick up a bit more on the private and public sector debate in a moment, but let's first bring in Johan again now. I mean, you talked a little bit about the business culture and needing the right kind of culture for this kind of competitiveness here in Sweden. Is that something that you think is there? I mean, it's certainly been an issue that's been raised by other prominent business leaders, by the founders of Spotify. You know, do we have the right business environment here in Sweden and in the Nordics to stay competitive in the face of Japan, the US, other countries that are pushing forward with innovation as well?
Yeah, I think everything can be improved, but generally speaking, yes. And that's not where we should be focusing on all the negatives. I think we should be focusing on what the opportunities are, and there are many. And then when you run into hurdles, then you talk about them and try to solve them. But there are some fundamental things I think that we need to put in place for staying ahead. Staying ahead is based on a position we have achieved through a great pioneering on internet and mobile, and also the societies being ahead and early on, for example, the SDGs. Many of the SDGs we are ahead and leading. On the climate change discussions, we're ahead on equal treatment, on job creation. So many of these we are, as a region, not country specific, but as a region, we are very well placed. That needs to be leveraged. And then you get into what we can do, and we're doing as much as we can, as well as we can. We're trying to open up the ecosystem because we're going away from an ecosystem as an industry, being just very focused on what we're doing internally between telcos and vendors, opening up that to say, well, hey, we're part of a completely new digital ecosystem, and we're venturing out, partnering up, and that is spreading and giving results. That we can do, we're going to do more of. But then we also need to get into concrete discussions. How can we stimulate further? And then we will discuss the tough topics and difficult decisions that can be, will be made by governments. Then you get into regulations, you get into things like spectrum allocation, and those are super important pillars of a digital society. They cannot be underestimated, and I don't think they're underestimated as important topics, but sometimes I wonder if all the impacts are understood, and that's what we are on a mission to explain locally, regionally, on the EU level, and we need to do more, because I'm not comfortable that we're going to get all the necessary pieces in place on some of these very, very important regulatory matters, for instance, and spectrum matters, which are critical. So we can go more into detail there, offline or online, but it's really, really important that we are aligned on the opportunities and impacts.
Yeah, the radio spectrum issue is extremely important, and we are used to see this in a very national context, and I think PTS are working quite good with these matters, but there is a European component here that is growing, and I think cooperation, we should be used to more of cooperation through these systems, and realize that if we want to be effective in the future, we have to do things together also in this matter. Both in, I compare it with the energy field, which I worked with more later. If we want a European energy system that is effective, we have to take away the borderlines, and I think it's the same in this area. If we want to use the radio spectrum, which is not an endless capacity, we want to use it effectively, we have to cooperate more. And this is becoming now a bigger and bigger issue. So that is also something we have to deal with. Coming in 2017, probably we have to take decisions on this. How much more should we put on the European level in this competence question?
Well, come to think of that, both governments and telcos are actually infrastructure providers in this manner. You provide fiber, you provide antennas, to put it very briefly, and government provides legislation, education, also things like the digital identity. And if we both do our jobs well enough, the content providers, like Spotify, like Skype, like many of the startups present here, they can really be successful, because I think the competitiveness issue is very much driven how good infrastructure we, together with telcos, are able to provide. And if we give the opportunities, believe me, the innovators don't need to be in the government. They don't need to be in the telcos themselves. Well, of course, we both provide some content as well, but I think if we give the tools, there will be millions of people thinking how to, create something on it. So we actually build the foundation, and if we do it together, we have a decent opportunity to make it really successful.
I want to pick up on something you said there. You mentioned infrastructure, but also education. The education and the training that people need to become the future staff of tomorrow is crucial. And I know that's something that Estonia has invested a lot in. So talk us through, what are you doing in schools to try and build that future?
Well, first of all, what's again about the competitiveness. The Nordic region has the best education in the world, and this is something we should be very proud of. It is Sweden, it is Finland, it is Estonia. We're all in the top 10 or very close to the top 10, and this is again a foundation for future success, not only in digital but in many other aspects as well. Now, as children start using pads like that in very early age. I don't know about you. My daughter was 1.5 years old when she started using something like this on the table, and she was like 2.5 years old when she became really frustrated, not understanding why our TV at home doesn't work when you properly swipe it. So what old school device you have? And if you think of that, providing them a proper ICT education is easier than ever. When I was a kid, in order to change folders or directories in the computer, I needed to type in some short code, and it didn't take me anywhere, basically just to another folder. So, well, life has become so much more advanced, and giving children the education not only to use those computers, but also to make them useful for you yourself and the wider world is essential. And this is the reason why we have pioneered for quite some time already ICT education, also coding for children with very, very young age. And they can do it with today's technology very playfully. So it's much easier to code in a way or achieve something than it used to be. So of course the languages that are very kind of advanced, they are still difficult to use, and you still need to master them. But to get the basic understanding how coding works, and to see that you do something and it creates something visible, and this gives the kind of, if you look at children coding, they achieve something, and it gives them this kind of great pleasure, and they are interested to do more advanced things, and this can lead to software developers of the future, and we must understand that the children of today, in 20 years' time, and the opportunities they have to code are something we can't even imagine today. Because if we take back the development 20 years ago, well, that was still MS-DOS time.
Can I just comment? I fully agree, and I think then you get excited about the opportunities again on if and when we stay ahead on competitiveness. But how do we stay competitive as a region? And I think our region, when I meet your colleagues and ministers and regulators across our territories, we are very aligned. there's not a very big difference in how we think about what's needed as a Nordic-Baltic region. But that's a one strong voice if we go it all together, because it's not the same if you go south in Europe, to be very clear. It's different. They have a different view on spectrum, they have a different view on roaming, they have a different view on net neutrality, and to be specific on some of our related matters in order to stay competitive. So I think we have a lot to do to first showcase the region, which is fantastic in many ways, and then bring it into concrete policy making that is needed to align on. I know you're working hard on that, but if we in any way can help, please don't hesitate to reach out to us in our various markets to help, to build the stories.
And what kind of competencies do you need moving forward? I mean, are you finding it a challenge to attract enough talent, both from within Sweden and abroad?
Oh, there is a talent war everywhere, I would say, and the only competitiveness as a company going long term is to have the right people. That's why we invest a lot in our people, in our culture. But to be specific, yes, coders will be a scarce or is a scarce resource, and we're fighting for the same talents. And honestly speaking, we haven't been seen as an attractive employer in the past for the best coders. We're getting there, but we're also realizing we probably can't attract all the top talents in all aspects, so therefore we need to partner. And then we're partnering in different ways. For example, with Spotify, who is a global leading company and have the world leading coders, and we're working closely with them. So I think there's, yes, we struggle, but we solve it in other ways. So that's our philosophy.
I mean, education-wise, Sweden has actually been slipping down the international PISA rankings. So, I mean, what is being done in Sweden to address that issue, to get kids into technology and in a more detailed way for the future?
There is a lot now that we are doing to focus on the education, and I think things are also now starting to get in a better way, but we have quite a long way to go, actually, I think. And I also think that things are changing now so rapidly, so quick, that we must make it more normal to take in these new technologies when you're getting, even when you are 30 now, you're getting old, because there's so much new technology that has come up since you were a teenager. So it's not so easy to be on the top all the time. And we see that when now Eriksson has a problem, they're super smart experts on engineering. They are old-fashioned. They have to get new ones directly from the schools, from the high schools and universities instead. And I think we have to focus on that. How can we make it more normal to get another education when you're in work and when you change work and so. But I also think you have a very extremely important point here when you're talking about the European Union. I tried to focus on that quite a lot now this afternoon, but it is so important that we cooperate. But it will not work if we, Estonia and Sweden and Finland and some countries, are doing this in a very smart, effective way. But Spain and all the others are saying, no, we don't dare to take on the new technology because we're losing jobs and all that. If we get that big gap and differences between the northern and the southern countries in Europe, it will not work. It will not work for us, and it will not work for them. So that is a growing challenge that we have to face and meet in very soon, I think.
Well, I fully agree that we need to get all of EU on board, and we need to work hard for that. But there are very good examples as well. For example, Germany. I had the pleasure of visiting the German cabinet meeting. All of German cabinet ministers are on the table. Angela Merkel invited me there to tell how I see the future of EU moving in a digital spectrum, and the ministers of German cabinet, they took very serious interest in this manner, and they asked very detailed and very sophisticated questions. And some months later, Angela Merkel came to Estonia to further learn from our experience what can be done, and I sincerely believe that under her leadership, Germany has the potential of being the biggest EU country going really big steps and bold steps in the digital world. Another point, just listening to you, another point I wanted to make is that, of course, education being extremely important, skills of the future being extremely important, but also what has been interestingly very, very positive in Estonia has been the experience. And experience of course, Finland and Sweden being our successful neighbors and learning from you has been a great thing, but also learning from the best Estonian practices. The first, well, we can easily call it the mutual first unicorn Skype was when it was developed by, well, Swedish and Danish investor and then 4 software engineers in Estonia started it, what became a multi-billion company, and we have, I think, more than 1,000 people living and working in Estonia who, during a couple of short years, were part of this success from 0 to billions. And as we have more than 1,000 people knowing how to do it, and many others learning from their experience, they got this kind of belief in them that, come on, I can repeat it. I can do it in other sector over and over again. And some of them have already managed. So if you look at the startup scene in Estonia, there is a big influence of the Skype success, and not so much the investment money by eBay or later Microsoft coming to Estonia. Some of it came to Estonia, obviously. But I think the more valuable is the experience that it can be done. And it's very important that not only the startuppers in Estonia have close relations, but the startuppers of Sweden, Finland, Estonia, share their experiences and share best practices and see each other not as competitors, but as allies from whom to learn, and then we can really, become a big player in the world.
I want to pick up on that in just a moment, but one final aspect of competitiveness, particularly in this region, is going to be the rollout of 5G. And so I wanted to ask Johan, Dennelind, what you need from governments and other sort of stakeholders as you seek to implement that, and does that also involve trying to get other parts of Europe on board?
No, that's a very current topic, and it happens to be coming up a commercial launch and trial in Tallinn and in Stockholm 2018. It's going to be very early out. We're not claiming first until we maybe be first, but it's going to be very early in close partnership with Eriksson, and other cities and vendors come as well. But Tallinn and Stockholm, it's not a coincidence that we're choosing Tallinn and Stockholm. They are digital capitals in the region, and here we really want to make available to the community that we were talking about, the ecosystem, which in the end will be leveraging a new way of accessing the digital world, and it's going to be faster, better, it's more stable, less latency, etc., etc. It's going to be a new paradigm in terms of how we drive the gigabit society with terabit territories, and it's coming. And it's coming soon. And my asks are the same, really. It's about clear policy making and don't over-regulate. Understand the importance of spectrum. Those are the fundamentals for this. And we are investing billions, almost 14 to 15 this year, Swedish kroner in the region, which is massive investments. And a lot of it's going to connecting the societies, not just the cities, the whole societies. We're saying connecting everyone to a gigabit society, not cities. It's reaching out. But that is dependent on the scarce resource that we were talking about, spectrum in the end. So yes, it's very important for our industry, for us of course, but for our industry and for the ecosystem. And we also believe, for the points that I made earlier on the growth of the economies, stimulating jobs, fulfilling the SDGs, creating a better society, is really one of the key components, which we should be humble about and take seriously and collaborate on. So that's my hope that we continue to do that.
Okay, let's move on and talk a little bit more about the public sector. Peter, you talked about some of the challenges, particularly here in Sweden, where certain groups and organisations have done things the same way for a long time. There's the municipalities versus the national scope. So I'd like to hear a bit more about the Estonian experience, because as you say, you're one of the leaders in e-cards, e-voting, lots of other aspects of public life that are already digitalised. What can Sweden learn from you?
Well, I'm in no position to tell any other government what to do, but I can only speak of our experience and what are the gains. I already spoke about giving the citizens the free time and just not coming to the state offices. The second thing is the state or the government actually wins a lot on different aspects as well. First of all, you don't need to worry so much how many offices you have around the country, which we both are not very densely populated, so we have lots of territory compared to our population, and if the citizens access all the services digitally, they don't need to worry where the office is or how many people work there. It's completely different understanding how to access the services. Now, so in theory, the government can provide exactly equal services to the person who lives next to the Stenbock House, which is the government building, and the person who lives on a remote island all alone. So, because the only thing they need is an antenna giving them Telia coverage, and so they can do the transactions over the internet. The other thing that government wins from digitalization is you actually can do the same amount of work with less people, and this is something our companies actually want from us, because they don't want the government to be too big of a burden for private sector, and they want us to be as effective as possible. So, for example, if you need to do anything on a paper form, you need a person, state official, taking it from you. You need a state official filing it. You need a state official entering the data to a computer. You need a load of state officials dealing with this particular paper. If the data is from the start digital, you can do the same work with way less people and get the information much faster. So it is a huge efficiency gain for the government as well, and citizens get it more comfortably and more equally around the territory. It doesn't matter where they physically are. Government can be so much more efficient, but also more transparent, because digitally it is easy to create transparency as well. And thirdly, I would mention also, as people are traveling much more, they go to vacation much more, they go to some Swedes move to southern countries to live there at their retirement, they still need some public services from Sweden. And the same is with Estonia. And if it is digital, they can physically be in Mallorca if they wish, and still get the public service. So these kind of gains are clearly there, and not all the innovation has come from the government. I'm too much bragging about the government solutions. I would say that most of the innovation has been done by private companies. The governmental role has to provide the infrastructure, of course, together with the telcos and the physical infrastructure.
Johan, you wanted to chip in there, I think. I mean, how can we get the sort of private sector startup buzzing mentality into some of these more historical structures and heavily regulated areas of the public sector?
No, the first thing I wanted to say is that, I mean, if you haven't been to Estonia to experience the digital society, you should go there, because every time I go there, it's a wow. New aspects of the digital life that you have. And I think it's also your predecessor and now Commissioner Ansip who is very passionate about this and spreads it. So I think it's really where we need to strive towards. I think to simplify it for me, it's get one digital entity. Try to standardize around one digital entity that the ecosystem buys into and starts to use. Simple as that, and as difficult as that, of course, to unify. But if you do it early, you get the benefits. So now there's
like mobile bank idea. Would that be an example of?
That's one example, right? But if you have too many different, you won't. It's not as easy to get scale. And then if you don't get scale early, it's not as easy to get the usage going and to get all the benefits. But there are different ways to do it, of course. But to simplify, that's what you should do. If you start a country today, go digital. Of course, if you have legacy and history as a country, which we all do, then it's somewhat more difficult. But then you need to find a path to navigate around. And the use also the various examples across the region, the companies that are passionate about investing and partnering up. So you don't have to do it, you just have to set out the prerequisites and enable it. And I think that's my learning from being in Estonia.
And Peter Eriksson, I mean, Minister for Digital Development, how much are you trying to encourage other departments across the board to really make this a priority?
Yeah, I really.
Is it a challenge?
Yeah, that is a challenge, and since I talked before of the power of decentralization, where it's very important and has been good to Sweden, but in this area, we also need some centralization actually to get things, to get an infrastructure that reaches out to everyone and not only to some towns and cities. And one area that is a good example is my area on housing now. There is a big problem. Many people talk about it takes too long time to get the right to build a house in Sweden. And this process is quite complicated, but we make it more complicated than it should be, because we don't have the same tools. The authorities have their maps, and the local city has their maps and systems, and then they have to scan it when it comes to the regional department to look over it, and the companies cannot use the same maps to make their suggestions. So it's a terrible mess actually, and
very refreshing, isn't it, to hear a politician saying that?
But the good thing is that there's a lot of good things we can do if we go through this, and a lot more efficiency we can get out in taking the right decisions.
Just a comment on that. In the study that we had Deloitte do, all in all, over the next up to 2021, I think we said around 500,000 jobs would be created by full digitalization across, and also increasing productivity, not just in governments but across the ecosystem as well. So there's a lot to do here, and it's broken down area by area. It's not limited to our industry. On the contrary, we're just a small part of this, that to stimulate other industries and society at large to capture the benefits of our situation where we're in the digital era.
I think the decision making that you say needs to be decentralized can still be in decision making who gets to build what where. But what I think you need in this is that there needs to be a single digital map, first of all, that is certified, that this is 100% clear, and this is the base, let's put it this way, that any paper map is only a copy, but this digital map, this is the base, and we all look at that. Then the decision can still be taken very locally, but the decision-making formula should not be on paper and scanning, but there needs to be clear and a regulated information system where every municipal official
and also the companies should be able to go into the same map.
Exactly. They all have. It doesn't mean that the Prime Minister or Minister of Environment or Minister of Economy or Minister of Housing has to take that this building in Gotland has to be built this way. That's not possible. No. That kind of centralization is not imaginable. But what can be done if there is an info system, there is a clear map, digital, and anyone can log in if they get, now it's their time to look at this, be it fire department, be it the local municipality, and at the end, the highest official who needs to decide. Okay. So the decision making still can be local.
Yeah, of course.
Final point, picking up on that. We haven't got a lot of time to discuss digital inclusion, but I think you've all kind of weaved that in, the need for everyone to have access to these different services. But I think, you gave that statistic, you're working to get, 95% of people with broadband. But what about that other 5%? The elderly, the people living in very remote areas, some of the new arrivals here who maybe don't have the same level of education as other people living here. So what are the key things that need to be done to make sure that it's not just us, sitting in this great building that gets a benefit, but everyone else as well? Let's start with you, Peter.
Yeah, there is a risk for a big gap on knowledge and also access to public services and the authorities and also health care. If one of the big possibilities right now is to do a revolution in healthcare. If you really take the opportunities that you have with digitalization and healthcare, and that is a revolution, I should say, and you can get it out to the whole population if you have the infrastructure out there, and we are really working on that. We are pushing now, working for a new broadband strategy that the goal will be to reach everyone.
Anything you guys would like to add?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate one of my earlier points.
Also in fiber and mobile. Mm-hmm. So it should not only be where you live, where you have the good connection, but you have to have it nowadays everywhere.
And that's the part of the point I wanted to reiterate, that connectivity is important. We need to ensure that everybody gets connected, and we're on a good path to do that in our region. Very, very few, if any, will be left behind. But then that's when it starts. When everybody is connected to the gigabit society, then it starts. And then you need a completely different set of mindset and different targets on digital inclusion. Then it's about digital capabilities in order to use the benefits of being connected. And I think that focus needs to come in now. And when I spoke earlier about ambitious targets, I think that's where you also policymakers and decision makers need to think, what can we do to ensure that people that graduate are digitally qualified and have the stamp of being e-citizen, and the same goes across elderly and sick. So look at it from that perspective rather than just connectivity is my plea to you.
Well, I think it is, again, in this respect, if you go abroad, the further you go, the more you realize how well off we are here in this region, having not only broadband but also mobile coverage. I probably think that in both Estonia and Sweden, it is a challenge to find a spot where you don't have at least 3G, and it's constantly improving. And when you go to some more distant place, it will be much more difficult. Now, of course, it's justified also to support from the government those remote areas that need fiber in order to have those antennas and mobile coverages, and also Estonia is doing that, and I think this is clearly justified because in the remote areas there is a clear market doesn't cover it. There is not enough customers. That's understandable, but I think we are fundamentally well off in this respect, and of course we simply need to continue with that. And you introducing 5G here is also a very important next step. Now, what comes to the digital education, I think Steve Jobs and many others have done a lot of things for us. You mentioned elderly people. My grandfather, who is now 81, he never really learned to use a PC, because it's somewhat complicated. Even with the more modern Windows, even with Mac, it was somewhat troublesome to use it for him, because it wasn't there when he was young and learning those things. Now, learning to use an iPad or iPhone or any other basically similar device, this is as easy as it gets. And we can only imagine how easy it will be in 5 or 10 years' time, because technology doesn't stop from developing. On the contrary, it develops much faster. So I think that everybody who doesn't use digital technology today will start using it at some point, and then the developers such as Apple and Eriksson and many others, they give, do it for us.
Thank you. One last comment. We do need to wrap up. It's just 6 o'clock, as the smart pad is telling us. But one final comment from you.
So I get the honor of having the last comment.
Well, since you're hosting, I think it would be a bit rude not to.
No, I was just going to end on digital leadership. I think it's just very, very important, and I think that is demonstrated with the digital leadership here. I mean, Estonia has had not just passionate prime ministers for digital, but also a president that has been very digital, and ICT ambassador. And I think it's really, really important when setting a digital agenda across, and going back to what the minister did back in '92, that is digital leadership, and that's more than ever required in order to stay ahead.
I think you wanted to make a final closing point as well.
Yeah, I think we should not see elderly and people that doesn't know so much on programming and such things as the problem. The problem is among the technicians, among the companies. Because if you talk about smart housing, smart cities, that's for these people. You should do it very simple. And that's the point of new technique, that it makes it easier and better for us all. And the ones that know least about the technique, they should be the first one that we should go for.
Very interesting. Thank you very much to all of our panel. Prime Minister of Estonia, Taavi Rõivas, Peter Eriksson, Minister for Housing and Digital Development here in Sweden, and Johan Dennelind, CEO of Telia Company. I'm sure you'll all give us a round of applause and thank them for this interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Marie.